What if everything you've been taught about Jesus is incomplete? What if humanity's greatest spiritual secret came from space? Many people will laugh, others will call it heresy. But there are those, and I know you're one of them, who feel there's something wrong with the version we've been told. This story isn't about flying saucers. It's not about conspiracy theories. This story is about a meeting that shouldn't have happened, and a revelation that no one was prepared to hear. It all started with a storm, a dull roar in the middle of the night, but it wasn't thunder. It was something else, something that changed my entire life. The next morning I found a crashed ship in my field, and inside it, a being. A wounded being, lost. But what he said to me, broke me inside. He talked about Jesus, but not the Jesus of the church, not the Jesus of the paintings. He spoke of a Jesus who knew how to manipulate reality, a Jesus who taught manifestation, frequency, energy field. And it was there, in that old shed in rural Montana, that I cried. Not out of fear, but to wake up. Because for the first time in my life, everything made sense. He showed me real holograms of Jesus healing people, not by an external miracle, but by an internal power that we all have, and that religion has hidden. He said that Jesus was observed by advanced civilizations, and what he tried to teach was distorted. They turned empowerment into dependence. Those were the creature's exact words. I know, it seems crazy. It sounds like a movie script, but what if it isn't? What if your whole life you were taught to ask, when you should actually be decreeing? What if all this pain, this loneliness, this scarcity is not God's punishment, but a reflection of your own unconscious frequencies? Do you know what else he told me? Jesus didn't pray asking. He prayed thanking, even before seeing the miracle. And in that moment, something inside me broke. I felt like I was waking up from a trance, as if I had lived 62 years sleeping, waiting for someone to save me. And for the first time, I understood that the Savior was inside me all along. I know this will move you, it will mess with your head. It will touch parts of your soul that have been buried for years. But if you've come this far, it's because something inside you is already waking up, and this story didn't come to you by chance. You will understand why the number 47. You will see with your own eyes the words of Jesus taking on a new meaning, and you will find out what else this entity revealed before leaving. But before that, you need to know who I was, before everything happened, because only then will you feel the impact of what you are about to hear. My name is Frank Morrison, and for 62 years, I've been a broken man, retired mechanic, divorced, weak heart, even weaker faith. My life was made of routine, bitter coffee, and empty prayers. I prayed every night, but it was like screaming into a well. Nothing responded. And maybe you understand what that is. That feeling of living without living, of waiting for a sign, of believing in God, but feeling ignored by him. It's like everyone has been given a life manual except you. But what if the manual was hidden on purpose? That's what I found out. Alone in a dirty shed with a being from another world telling me that Jesus didn't come to make us dependent, but to remind us of our power. If this story has already started to move you, talk to me here in the comments. Tell me if you've ever felt this, as if there was something more, as if what we were taught wasn't the whole story. I'll read everything, and I'll respond, because this conversation is more than a video. It's a calling. And yes, I know there's a lot of stuff on the internet. There are videos every day trying to get your attention, but this one is different, because what you're about to see in the next few minutes could make your soul remember what it has forgotten. So if you feel, deep down, that there's something special happening right now, leave your like, activate the bell, subscribe to the channel, not by me, but for yourself. Because what this alien revealed about Jesus was just the beginning. And now you need to understand who I was. Before looking into his eyes for the first time, my whole life, fixing other people's things, but without being able to fix anything within myself. Divorced, distant son, rare friends. I woke up alone. I slept alone. And yet every night, before I closed my eyes, I prayed. I'm not sure why. Maybe out of habit. Maybe out of fear. Or maybe for a hope that refused to die, even after so many years of silence. But my prayers were always the same. Lord, help me. I'm tired. I have no health. I have no one. If you are there, please do something. And then silence. The kind of silence that hurts. Silence that accumulates in the corners of the soul like dust in an abandoned house. And over time, you stop expecting answers. You stop believing that anything ever will change. That was the routine I lived in for years. Until that morning, it was raining heavily. The kind of rain that makes it sound like the sky is screaming. And in the midst of the darkness, a different rumble, as if the ground itself had swallowed something alive. The noise was so loud that I woke up with my heart racing, but I didn't go see what it was. I just thought it must have been a tree falling. The other day, when the storm had passed and the sun was shining through the kitchen window, I saw something in the field, a strange metallic shine. I used the old binoculars and saw better. It wasn't a car. It wasn't wreckage. It was something different, too smooth, too perfect. I grabbed my boots, took a deep breath, and walked over. At first I thought it was some fallen structure, maybe airplane debris. But as I got closer, I realized the thing wasn't human-made. The metal changed color depending on the angle of the light. It was as if it had a life of its own. And then I saw him, crouched, messing with some kind of panel. Gray skin, long limbs, large head, dark, deep-set eyes, and yet sad. It wasn't human. But he didn't seem to want to hurt me either. When he saw me, he slowly raised one hand, palm open, a universal gesture of peace. But I ran. I ran like a coward. At 62, with my heart racing, I returned home and locked everything up. I stared out the window. He didn't move. He just stared. An hour later, he was still there. His head hung low as if defeated. And that's when something started to hurt inside me. Because as absurd as it seemed, I saw in that creature something I knew very well: loneliness. The kind of loneliness that doesn't make noise, that doesn't scream, but weighs. The same one I carried for years without telling anyone. I can't really explain why, but I went there. With rifle in hand for safety, not aggression. I stopped a few meters away. And that's when I heard, inside my head, his first sentence: "I won't hurt you." The voice didn't come from my mouth. It went straight to my mind. Clear, kind, almost familiar. He said he was trapped, that he needed help, that the ship was damaged. I asked, why me? Why here? And he answered something that left me silent. Because you're a mechanic. Like me. You fix broken things. And now I'm the one who's broken. That sentence pierced me. It was as if he had seen inside me. As if even though he was from another world, he knew exactly what it was like to be lost, not knowing how to get back. Against everything I believed, I agreed to help. I pulled the ship with my truck to the warehouse. I closed the doors. And for the next 3 days, I repaired that ship with him by my side. The first day, I could barely look him in the eye. I was shaking. I was sweating. I wondered if I had gone crazy. But little by little, between one play and another, he began to speak. And he didn't talk about his planet. Not about war, technology, or invasion. He was talking about Jesus. And that's when my floor started to crumble. He said that the image we have of God is wrong. That heaven is not a place in the clouds. That God is not outside. He is inside. He said that Jesus did not come to teach us how to ask, but to demonstrate. And when he used that word, I confess, I felt angry. Manifest what? I've been praying for decades, and I've never received anything. I screamed. He just looked at me with those dark eyes and said, because you pray wrong, Frank. You pray in fear, in doubt, in scarcity. And you manifest exactly that. At that moment, my throat went dry. Because deep down, I knew it was true. My every prayer was a cry of despair, not a decree of certainty. And that's when he handed me a crystal. He told me to choose something small, something unlikely. I chose number 47. Now feel as if you've already seen this number. Be thankful as if it's already happened. But I haven't seen it yet. That's the problem. You live in the current reality, not the desired one. I closed my eyes, I tried to feel, and for a few seconds, I did. On the same day, the number started appearing everywhere. Bill, change, license plate, radio, 4 or 5, 6 times. That disarmed me. I had manifested a number. It wasn't a coincidence. It couldn't be. He smiled. He said this was just the beginning, that Jesus did the same thing, only with bread, with healing, with absolute faith. He showed recordings, holograms from 2,000 years ago. Jesus healing not with touch, but with energy. The emotion I felt was indescribable. It was like watching something sacred being revealed for the first time after being hidden for centuries, and it was real. I saw Jesus saying, the kingdom of God is within you. And for the first time, I understood what that meant. It wasn't a metaphor, it was an instruction, a map, the key I never had. Do you understand the weight of this? The creature showed me that I was never a victim, that my thoughts created my reality, and that if I wanted to change everything, I would have to start here, inside, in my mind, in my words, and my emotions. And I cried for 4 days, not because of pain, but because, finally, I understood. If you've made it this far, tell me in the comments. Do you also feel like something was hidden from us? Have you ever felt like you were praying but weren't heard? Comment. I want to remember who I am if that resonates with you. Or just comment on number 47. Let's see how many of us are starting to wake up together. And of course, leave your, it shows that this kind of story needs to be told. And if you haven't signed up yet, do it now. Because what the being showed me after that will shake up everything you believe about faith, power, Jesus, and yourself. And that's how everything started to fall apart inside me. What that being revealed, what he showed me. I couldn't unsee it. It was as if all my life I had seen the world through a crack in the wall, and now he had simply opened the door. In the following days, I didn't sleep well. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that holographic scene of Jesus again. Not the idealized Jesus of the church's stained glass windows. Not the sacred and distant icon we were taught to worship but not to understand. What I saw was a man of flesh and blood. Simple, direct, loving, but filled with a strange invisible force, a magnetic presence. He didn't heal people by saying, "God will help you." He activated something in them. It was as if his energy lit a spark within each of them. And then they rose. They healed. Not by any miracle from outside, but because something inside them was awakening. The creature explained that that strength was not exclusive to Jesus. She called that the absolute certainty frequency. He said we all have access to it, but we've been programmed to forget. By fear, by conditioning, by the idea that we are weak, sinful, unworthy. And it was at this point that something very intimate emerged in me. Anger, the indignation, the weight of all the times I knelt down asking for help, assistance, salvation, and I felt ignored. "So you're telling me that everything I've experienced, all this suffering, I created it?" I asked, almost shouting. The creature just looked at me, as if it understood but didn't back down, not by conscious choice, but by the frequency at which you operated, by the thoughts you repeated, by the words you used, by the energy you vibrated every day without realizing it. At that moment, I broke down, because every sentence turned me against myself. It made me review each year of my life as if I had been in a trance. And the most painful part, there was no one else to blame, not even God. Neither does my ex-wife, neither does my boss, neither does the government, not the joke. It was me. It's always been me. Not out of guilt, but out of ignorance. Because no one ever taught me that. On the contrary, they taught the opposite. I was taught that humility was feeling small, what faith it was to wait, that God was a distant being who attended to some and ignored others. They taught me to ask, to plead, to deserve. But no one ever told me that every thought was a decree, that every word carried frequency, that each emotion was a fuel that shaped my reality. The creature then showed me more. She activated a new projection. This time it wasn't Jesus, it was me, my versions, at various moments in life. Me, 25 years old, arguing with my wife, yelling, breaking things. Me, at 35, getting fired, saying this always happens to me. Me, at 45, alone, with a bottle of whiskey in my hand, cursing life. Me at 55 in a hospital repeating, "God, why me?" Each of those scenes was like a punch in the stomach, but worse than seeing was hearing. The creature showed my aura at these moments. Faint, distorted, dark. She said, "Look closely." Every time you felt anger, guilt, fear, or lack, your frequency dropped, and the universe responded to that, not as punishment, but as a reflection. And then she did something that destroyed me inside. Showed my prayer. Not one in particular, but the pattern. Frank kneeling beside the bed, hands clasped, head bowed. "Lord, I have no strength left. I'm alone. Retirement is useless. My heart is failing. Help me." She paused the image and said, "See how your energy field behaves as you pray." And it was devastating. The more I asked, the darker it got. You were asking for help, but your vibration was one of desperation, and the universe doesn't listen to words. It responds to frequency. And then came the sentence that tore me apart. You weren't praying. You were decreeing your own misery. The silence that followed the sentence was the heaviest of my life. I sat on the workbench in the shed and cried. Again, because in that moment, everything fell into place. Why things never work out. Why doors always close. Why I attracted the wrong people, frustrated opportunities, illnesses that wouldn't go away. I always vibrated in I don't have. I always said it never happens to me. I always said nobody loves me, everything goes wrong, life is hard. And life obeyed me. It was at this point that the creature showed me something new. The prayer of Jesus. Different from mine. Different from most people. She showed a scene in which he, before multiplying the loaves, gave thanks as if he had already received. "Father, thank you for this abundance." Food didn't exist yet, but he thanked as if he were already there. And that's exactly why she showed up. That's real faith, Frank, not the faith of hoping, but the faith of knowing, the faith of vibrating as if it were already real. It was at that moment that I understood that Asking and thanking are completely different frequencies. Asking carries a lack. Giving thanks brings fullness, and it is the fullness that manifests, not the lack. The creature then invited me to try something new. You have already manifested the number 47. Now try something bigger, but with discipline, with truth. She handed me 2 more crystals. He told me to wear one in the morning, another at night, the third with me during the day. They don't do the work for you. They just help maintain the vibration while your mind tries to pull you back into the old pattern. And that's how everything started to change. But not from the outside in, from the inside out. The next day, before anything else, I sat on the porch and closed my eyes. For 5 minutes I was grateful, not for paid bills, not for perfect health, not for love already present, but for the certainty that all this was coming. And for a few moments, I felt like I was already here. The lightness, the heat in the chest, the feeling that everything was falling into place. I gave thanks as Jesus did, not from what I saw, but for what I chose to believe was real. And that changed everything. If this part of the story touched you in any way, leave the word "I remember" in the comments. Or better yet, tell me a phrase that you repeat all the time and now realize you might be manifesting. Let's talk about it. Let's break these cycles together. And if you haven't already, sign up now. This is just the beginning. What comes next will challenge everything you think you know about faith, about reality, and about who you really are. That morning, something was different. I had done the exercise. I sat on the porch, closed my eyes, and gave thanks for things that weren't yet physically present. But that, for a moment, felt as real as the wooden floor beneath my feet. And when I opened my eyes, the world was the same. But I wasn't. It was as if an invisible layer had been peeled away from my mind. As if a curtain had been pulled back, revealing something that had always been there, but that I simply couldn't see before. The feeling didn't last long. All it took was the first news story on the radio, an overdue bill on the refrigerator, an old thought appearing out of nowhere, and there it was, the old pattern trying to return. See? Nothing has changed. But this time I was observing. For the first time, conscious. I'd noticed the thought coming, and before it could become a feeling, I'd cut it off. I'd take a deep breath. I'd repeat to myself, I don't accept this frequency. I choose another. It was harder than it sounds. The mind has vices. It automatically returns to scarcity, fear, and urgency. It likes the familiar, even if the familiar slowly destroys you. The alien explained it to me clearly. Thoughts are like mental tracks. The more you walk them, the deeper they get, and the easier it is to get back on the same path. Most people live on these tracks for decades. You are now jumping off them. And I was trying. One thought at a time. One replacement at a time. During the day, I carried one of the crystals in my pocket as he instructed. I can't tell if it was psychological or energetic, but whenever I started to slip back into an old pattern, the crystal seemed to heat up, as if warning me, and I went back to the new. On the second day, now more stable, I returned to the warehouse to talk to him. The ship was almost ready. It glowed with a gentle pulse. The symbols around the structure looked different. I don't know if they had actually changed or if I was just seeing them with new eyes. He told me, you are beginning to perceive layers that have always been there. The frequency of perception rises with your vibration. So what I saw now wasn't something new. It was something forgotten. I asked to see more recordings of Jesus, not the public ones, crowded with disciples. I wanted to know what he said in his most intimate moments. I wanted to see the man, not the myth. The creature understood. He touched a few points on the panel and a new image formed in the air. It was a simple room with stone walls and a narrow window. A small group of people sat on the floor. And in the center, Jesus. His face was serene, but his eyes burned with a gentle passion, like burning coals. He gestured with his hands as he spoke. And though there was no sound in the projection, it was as if the words went straight to the heart. He pointed to the sky, then to his own chest, and finally to the others. He repeated the gesture several times. The creature translated. He's saying, what you seek out there already lives within you. Afterward, he gets up and walks to a fig tree through the window. He touches the tree and it begins to wither. The disciples are startled. Jesus turns to them and explains again without sound, but with the energy of the scene clear. If you have faith and do not doubt, you will say to this mountain, be removed and thrown into the sea, and it will be done. And there, in that moment, I understood the phrase for the first time in my life. He wasn't saying to ask God to do it. He was saying, you will say, you will move the mountain, and it will happen. Jesus didn't come to found a religion. He came to remind us how to use the power we already carry. The creature paused the image. It looked at me, or rather it looked inside me and said, that's why they killed him. At the time, it gave me a lump in my throat. I'd always thought Jesus died to save us, that it was all part of a divine plan. But there, seeing it with my own eyes, it seemed different. They didn't kill Jesus because he was good, said the creature. They killed him because he was dangerous. Dangerous for the system, for the structure, for the religious empire that profited from ignorance and fear. Because the people who understand their own power do not need intermediaries. Such a people do not depend on temples, pastors, or guilt. A people like this are free. And freedom, for those who thrive on control, is the greatest threat of all. I was silent for a long time after that. I walked over to the ship. I ran my hand over its surface. It vibrated gently. "I can show you something else," the alien said, "but it's going to be intense." I said I was ready. He played one more sequence on the panel. This time the image that appeared was mine. Again. But it wasn't Frank who suffered anymore. It was Frank. After the change. Frank, who woke up every day, sat on the porch and was grateful for a new reality. The Frank who watched his thoughts like a watchman, who exchanged every negative phrase for an affirmation of abundance, that began to attract unlikely situations, unexpected encounters, daily synchronicities, and I saw with my own eyes the energy field around me expanding, gaining color, intensity. The creature explained, "This is the future you are creating now, and the longer you sustain this vibration, the more inevitable it becomes." It was like looking at a version of myself that I always knew existed but could never reach. And for the first time, I saw myself not as a lonely old man, but as a man in the process of rebirth. I want you to stop for a moment and think about this with me. How many versions of you are sleeping inside you right now? How many parallel lives could be manifesting? If you changed what you feel, what you think, what you believe, can you feel it in there, that shiver, this intuition that all of this is true? So answer me here in the comments, which version of you are trying to be born? Write "I am waking up" if you felt something real about it. Or just write a sentence you want to decree from today onwards. Something you want to attract. Something you want to be. This will help you, and it will inspire whoever reads it. And if you haven't done so yet, subscribe to the channel. I'm not here to convince you. I'm here to remind you. What comes after that will be the point of no return. On the morning of the third day, I avoided the shed. I tried to act as if nothing had happened. Coffee, radio on, newspaper on the table, everything that had been part of my routine before, but it was impossible. It was like trying to put a new soul into an old life. Everything seemed small, artificial. The coffee maker was too loud. The silence between radio commercials gave me chills. And inside me, the storm was beginning again. Because as much as I had felt the awakening, the truth, the new frequency, a part of me still wanted to escape. I wanted to say that it was all madness, that I had made it up, that it was all in my tired, lonely head searching for some kind of meaning at the end of my life. But the other part, the one that had cried, felt the warmth in his chest, seen the number 47 repeat itself like magic. That part knew. It knew with painful clarity that it was real. I wasn't dealing with fiction, nor with hallucination. I was dealing with what is, and what always was. I just didn't see it. I sat on the porch for over an hour, watching the fields, the sky, the still fresh tracks where the ship had passed. And I could only think one thing. If this is true, then everything I've experienced before has been a lie. And thinking like that hurts. It's like swallowing your own life backwards. I kept asking myself, why didn't anyone say this before? Why didn't anyone teach me to think like this, to feel like this? Why was I told that faith was waiting when in reality it was manifesting? But deep down I knew the answer. Because the truth sets you free, and those who live in control fear freedom. It was then that I heard the voice inside my head. It didn't come from outside. It didn't come from the radio. It came as a steady, sweet whisper. "Frank, I can sense your conflict from here. If you want, come to the shed. I need to show you something else." I hesitated. My breath caught in the middle of my chest, but I got up. Each step toward the warehouse felt like a walk between two worlds. One I knew but no longer served me, and another I was beginning to touch but didn't yet understand. The creature was there, standing beside the ship, silent, but it was as if it had been waiting for me since before my doubts arose. "You're resisting," she said without judgment. "I'm not resisting," I replied. "I'm scared. It's the same. Resistance is just fear dressed up as logic. How could I not be afraid?" I asked, almost angrily. "You're telling me that everything I've experienced was created by me, that every pain, every loss, every failure, I manifested it. How do I deal with it?" The creature looked at me, and for the first time I saw something like compassion in its dark eyes. No pity, but recognition. "You carry an ancient burden. Millions do. They believe they are victims of the world, of God, of fate, because that's what they were taught. But the truth, Frank ... is that you always had power. You just didn't know how to use it." She then activated the hologram. But this time, it was different. It was as if I saw every version of myself simultaneously. Frank as a teenager, Frank at 30, Frank at 40, at 50, each living inside their own emotional bubble. And in every scene there was one constant, one central thought. I'm not good enough. Nobody stays with me. God has forgotten me. Nothing works. The creature paused the images. Those thoughts, Frank, were seeds, and the emotions you fed were the water. What grew from that, was your life. I sat down without strength. So it's all my fault, I asked. Do I deserve everything I've experienced? It's not guilt, it's creation. Guilt paralyzes. Responsibility liberates. What you experienced is not punishment. It's reflection. The universe doesn't judge. It only responds. I wanted to get up and run away, but my feet wouldn't obey. Something inside me knew that running away would only postpone the inevitable. Then she came closer. She touched my shoulder with that long, gentle hand. You're afraid of power because it demands responsibility, and you've spent your entire life outsourcing everything, waiting for God or someone to come and save you. I remained silent. She continued, now that you know the truth, there's no going back. You can pretend nothing has changed, but something inside you has already awakened, and it's not sleeping anymore. I stood up slowly. I walked over to the ship. It glowed as if it were breathing. I touched the symbols on the surface. The instant my skin touched that strange metal, something happened, a vision. But it wasn't with the eyes. It was as if my mind had been pulled to another plane. I saw Jesus, but not as before, not as a holographic image. I felt what he felt. It was like being inside him, and there I understood. I understood why he said, I and the Father are one. I understood why he taught in parables. I understood why he prayed with gratitude, not supplication, because Jesus did not come to be worshipped. He came to be mirrored, but that mirror was hidden, broken, replaced by dogma. They turned an empowerment manual into an obedience system. When the vision ended, I took a step back, stunned. Was that real? I asked. More real than anything they told you. You didn't see it with your eyes. You saw it with your soul. And the soul doesn't lie. She handed me 3 more crystals. She told me I should wear them daily. One to meditate on in the morning, another one in my pocket during the day, the third one under the pillow at night. They will help you keep your frequency high until you no longer need external assistance, until the new pattern becomes natural. I picked up the crystals. They were different from the first. They glowed brightly, and there was something about them, almost like a whisper, a pulse, a silent reminder that I was changing. What if I fail? I asked. You will fail, many times, but it's not about perfection. It's about persistence. Every time you come back to center, you strengthen the new. I took a deep breath. The air seemed denser, more alive. Reality was no longer the same. Or maybe I was finally seeing reality as it always was. As I left the shed, I looked back. She didn't say anything else, but her eyes said it all. I was ready, even without knowing exactly what was coming next. But one thing I knew, I would never be the same again. If you're reading this far and something inside you is stirred with a lump in your throat, a racing heart, and the desire to close your eyes and just feel, then comment below, I assume my power. Or share with me what you feel you need to let go of to live this new reality. Sometimes just writing begins the transformation. And if this really touched you, show the universe that you are ready. Like, subscribe and turn on notifications. Not by algorithm, but as a silent decree. I'm here. I'm ready. You can show me more. That night I didn't sleep. I lay for hours, my eyes open in the darkness, hearing every little sound in the house as if it were new. The wind against the window, the creaking of the ceiling, the ticking of the kitchen clock. Everything seemed part of something larger, as if even ordinary noises carried an invisible code that, until then, I had never perceived. And in the silence between one thought and another came the question that wouldn't leave me alone. Why me? Why did this being end up in my field of all places now? Why did he choose me? Why show all this to someone like me, an ordinary man, tired, broke, almost invisible? But the more I thought, the more another question grew beneath the first. What if he didn't choose me? What if I was the one who called him ... without knowing? And this idea came to me like a revelation. How many times in the solitude of nights when no one was listening to me, did I pray for a sign, for a truth, for something that made sense? How many times have I screamed inside my chest a request that never came out of my mouth? Show me what is real. Maybe that's what happened. Maybe that's what I manifested way back when. And the answer was only arriving now in the most unlikely way possible. The next morning I opened my eyes, and before I even set foot on the floor, I felt something different. A kind of pulsing in the air, as if everything were vibrating at a slower, denser, more present pace. I reached for the crystal under my pillow. It was warm, as if it had stored something from the night. I put my hand to my chest, took a deep breath and thought, today I'm not going back. And I did. I got up and meditated with the first crystal in my lap. It was a simple yet powerful exercise. Closing my eyes, feeling my breath, imagining a white light filling my body, as if every cell were being reprogrammed with a new frequency. After 10 minutes, I repeated the affirmations in a low voice. Everything is working in my favor. I manifest with awareness. The divine works through me. The kingdom of God is within me now. I repeated it unhurriedly, not like someone trying to convince themselves, but like someone who already knows and is just remembering. During the day, I made a point of observing myself. With every negative thought, a pause. For each automatic scarcity sentence, a correction. It was exhausting, I confess. My mind wanted to sabotage me the whole time, but I was present, and that alone was already a miracle. Later, I decided to visit the town pastor, Pastor Williams. A good man, sincere in heart, but bound by doctrine. It had been years since I'd set foot in that church. Not since my mother's funeral. I entered through the side. The temple was empty. He saw me and smiled in surprise. Frank? I thought you had given up on faith. I stopped for a moment. I looked around. The pews, the altar, the wooden cross, so much that carried so much fear disguised as devotion. Maybe I never really had faith, Pastor. Just fear. He frowned. He invited me to sit down. I told him not everything, but enough. I spoke of the presence, of the ship, of the being, of what he showed me about Jesus. His face changed, first curiosity, then concern, finally judgment. Frank, you're playing with dangerous forces. This is the work of the enemy. This is not from God. I looked into his eyes, not with anger, with compassion. But what if it's God, showing that we never really understood him? He shook his head. God speaks through the Bible, through tradition, through what has already been revealed. You are being deceived. And there, in that moment, I understood. There was no going back. Because once the soul sees, it cannot unsee. I stood up respectfully, shook his hand and said, Pastor, Jesus healed without ritual. He manifested with intention. He gave thanks before seeing. This is not heresy. It is forgotten wisdom. He didn't answer. He just looked at the cross behind me as if asking for help. I left the church with a light heart. Because I realized that the resistance of others is just a reflection of their own imprisonment, and everyone wakes up when they're ready. Back in the warehouse, I found the creature finishing adjustments to the ship. She looked at me and said, You face judgment today. You are ready for the next step. What's the next step? I asked, wary to create. Create what? Reality. I remained silent, because even with everything I had already experienced, that word still felt too big. You already understand how emotions shape matter. Now you need to experience it in a practical way, not just numbers, but situations, people, paths. Everything around you responds to your vibration. Let's see what you can summon. In 7 days. 7 days. It sounded biblical. What if I can't? You will succeed, as long as you don't doubt it, as long as you act as if it's already real. He handed me a small device. It looked like a crystal disc. This will measure the coherence between what you feel and what you think. Whenever there is misalignment, it will vibrate. Use it constantly, and align again. I thought about how difficult this would be. How can you live in constant coherence when everything around you seems to pull you back to the old? She answered before I asked. You're not trying to be perfect. You're practicing presence. Those words kept echoing in my mind. Train presence. Not controlling everything. Do not dominate the invisible. Just being here, feeling, choosing, adjusting, again and again. That late afternoon, I meditated again, this time with clear intention. I projected a scene, me receiving an unexpected letter. Inside her, something that represented the news cycle. An answer, a sign. I did as Jesus did. I thanked him first. I closed my eyes. I visualized the envelope. I touched it in my mind. I felt its texture, its smell, its weight. I felt the joy of receiving him as if he were already here. Then I let go. And at that moment, there was no anxiety. No doubt, just certainty and peace. If you've made it this far, take a deep breath with me for a moment. Close your eyes now if you can. Feel what you are vibrating today. Feel the frequency you have been feeding without realizing it. If this story is touching something inside you, if something is awakening, comment below, I create with presence. Or write down what you want to manifest in the next 7 days. It can be simple, but it has to be true. And if you haven't signed up yet, now's the time. Show the universe with this small action that you are ready to be intentional. This journey is not over yet. On the morning of the first day, I was as excited as a child on Christmas Eve. Not because I was expecting something magical to fall from the sky, but because for the first time in my life I felt like I was no longer a spectator of my own reality. I was an active part. I was a co-creator. Before even getting out of bed, I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and immersed myself in the scene I had projected the night before. The letter. I relived every detail, the brown envelope, the rough texture, the precise fold. I felt its weight in my hand. I imagined the smell of the paper, and I was grateful, as if it were already there on my desk. Upon waking, I repeated my morning ritual with the crystal in my lap. Meditation, silence, breathing, and focus. And for the first time in many years, my body felt light, as if an invisible coat of pain had been lifted from me. I walked to the porch. The sun had barely risen. The field ahead was still shrouded in a thin, almost mystical mist. The ship, shrouded in the shed, seemed asleep. I didn't see the creature that day. It had said that from then on I needed to walk the path alone, that it would only interfere if I called it with clear intention. And it was good, because I found myself facing life without crutches. Just me, my choices, and the frequency I could sustain. I decided to keep my routine as normal as possible, but everything was different. Every action, putting water on the fire, combing her hair, looking in the mirror, seemed charged with intention. And it was on the third day that something happened. I was at Greg's grocery store, the same place I'd been going for over 20 years. I went to buy rice and matches when I heard someone call my name. I turned around. It was Samuel, a guy who worked with me a long time ago. He's been missing since he moved to the neighboring town. He hugged me tightly, almost knocking me over. "Frank, man, I was thinking about you yesterday. There's no way this meeting was a coincidence." I felt a shiver. Coincidence or synchronicity? He started a conversation, talked about his family, the new workshop he had opened, the challenges. And in the middle of the conversation, he mentioned something that froze me inside. I had a client who left a box full of old papers. She said she had valuables from someone named Morrison. I thought he was a relative, but I didn't have your contact information. I still have it today. My heart raced. I asked if I could see it. He said he would bring it in the afternoon. And right there, on the sidewalk in front of the grocery store, I understood what was happening. It wasn't the letter, but it was something similar. It was a call from the past, coming back to the exact time I decided to create with intention. I went home and waited, calmly, without anxiety. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, his car pulled into the dirt driveway, and in his hands he carried the box. When I opened it, I got a shock. Letters from my mother. Some she wrote and never sent to me. Small photos of me. A diary of hers from the last months of her life. And among the papers, a manila envelope with my name handwritten on it. It was the letter of the... I trembled. I sat down. I breathed. The heart seemed to beat to the rhythm of the entire universe. I opened it carefully. Inside there was only one sheet of paper, with just one sentence. "You're not small. They just forgot to teach you how to be big." The tears came before I even understood the dimension of what I was experiencing. My mother, wherever she was, delivering me the manifestation I projected. Was it or wasn't it the letter? It was more than that. It was living proof that when you vibrate with clarity, the universe responds with precision and with love. In the following days, the synchronicities continued. On the radio, a song my ex and I used to dance to. On the news, a report about retired mechanics returning to work with alternative technology. A lady in the bank line touched me on the shoulder and said, "Your face brings me peace. I feel like you have something special to teach me." I just smiled. But inside, I knew. The frequency was operating. And it wasn't magic, it wasn't a spell. It was the science of emotion aligned with thought, supported by a feeling of certainty. On the 6th day, I returned to the shed. The creature was waiting for me, but this time it wasn't alone. 3 beings similar to her stood around the ship, in silence, each one with a calm expression but full of presence. She came closer. She looked at me firmly and said, "You have completed the cycle. You created with intention. You sustained the vibration. Now you must choose. Stay here or expand." I didn't understand. Expand to where? Expand your consciousness. Share what you know. Awaken others. This has a cost. Rejection. Misunderstanding, but also ... light. My chest hurt. Because I already knew that what I had experienced could no longer be hidden. But would anyone believe me? Would I have the courage to speak? She didn't answer. She just touched my chest with her hand. And there I saw flashes of the future. People crying, listening to my story. Others awakening, remembering, and the name of Jesus being spoken with a gleam in the eyes, not with fear, but with power. When the vision passed, I fell to my knees. Not because of pain, but because I realized that I was never alone. From the beginning, there was something guiding me. A force, a presence, a calling. The creature knelt in front of me. "You're not special, Frank, but you did something few do." You responded. And that's when I knew that it was just the beginning. If this part touched you, if you felt this presence while reading, comment below. I choose to expand. Or tell me, what has been the greatest synchronicity in your life so far? It may seem small, but if it made an impression on you, there's something there to remember. And if you haven't liked or subscribed yet, now's the time. Not for me, but for you. Every gesture here, however small, vibrates on the field. And you already know, the field always responds. That late afternoon had a silence that seemed eternal. The kind of silence you can't hear but feel. Not in your ears, in your chest. It was as if the air around you had stopped moving, and yet something stirred inside me. After the vision, after the creature's touch, after that phrase that still echoed, "You are not special." But you responded. I stayed there, kneeling on the dirt floor of the shed, not knowing whether to cry or to give thanks. It was there that I realized that the highest point of the spiritual journey is not knowing more. It's about feeling more. Feel clearly. Feel presently. Feel humbly. And in that moment, kneeling before beings that perhaps no one in the world will ever believe I saw, I didn't feel lesser. I felt like I belonged. As if finally I was fitted into the invisible puzzle of existence. The creature rose slowly. Its eyes, dark as space, now seemed to glow a soft blue. "It's time to tell," she said. "Tell what?" "All." I widened my eyes, but who will believe me? They will call me crazy, a delusional old man. "Heretic." She stepped forward, touched my heart again, and said, "You won't speak to convince. You'll speak to remember." And in that instant, something inside me understood. The words that would come out of my mouth from then on would not be to prove anything, but to wake up those who are ready to remember. I remembered what she said at the beginning. Jesus didn't come to be worshipped. He came to be mirrored. And I, like so many others, had spent my entire life treating Jesus as a monument, not as a mirror. Because that's what was done to him. They turned the mirror into a statue, the lesson in liturgy, the teaching in dogma. And the cruelest of all, they turned the example of freedom into a symbol of fear. The creature activated one last projection. It was the crucifixion scene. But not as the movies show. There was no shouting, no exaggeration. It was silent, almost sacred. Jesus, hanging, his eyes half open, weak, but not defeated. And then something extraordinary happened. The projection camera, if I can call it that, began to move away. And the higher it moved, the more I realized there were other presences there, beings that did not belong to that time, nor to that plane. They watched from afar silently. One of them played some kind of instrument. The other held out his hands as if holding something invisible. The creature explained, these beings were here. They watched the moment, because they knew that body was being left. But the teaching could not be lost. Then why did they let that happen? I asked. She looked tenderly, because Jesus chose to. He knew his pain would be used as a symbol, but he left something encoded for those who had eyes to see. The projection moved forward. It showed the disciples, then the cave, then the resurrection. But it wasn't the body that was returning. It was the frequency. It was as if what was resurrected was not a man, but a vibrational field. And there everything made sense. Jesus no longer needed to be here in the flesh, because what he activated lives everywhere. There is someone with the courage to remember. When the image faded, I was no longer the same. I asked to be left alone in the warehouse. The creature nodded, and the three beings walked away, entering the ship. She remained at the door, simply watching. I knelt again, not out of submission, but out of reverence for life. And I started talking to God, but not like before, not asking, not complaining, not negotiating. I spoke as if I were talking to an old friend who had always been there, just waiting for me to stop shouting so I could respond. I'm here. I'm ready. Use me as a channel. And in that moment, I felt a wave of heat rise up my spine, as if something had been unlocked. My throat began to throb. My chest vibrated. And an inner voice said to me gently, "Speak. Write. Show. You won't be alone." That night I wrote the first pages of what you are listening to now. No filter. No frills. No pretense. Only truth. And I confess, I was scared. Afraid to expose all of this. Afraid that they would laugh at me. Afraid that my own faith would attack me. But then I remembered what the creature said. You won't talk to convince. You'll talk to remember. And if at least one person hears this and feels a shiver, an awakening, a desire to change, it will all be worth it. From that day on, I started talking to people in the city more attentively. The baker who always gave me the wrong change, I realized he only did that when he was distracted by the fear of going bankrupt. The woman at the gas station who always had a long face had lost her son and hid it behind an automatic smile, and I understood. Everyone is sleeping, but no one is really lost, because the call never stops ringing. We just need to silence the noise of the world. To listen. I started leaving anonymous notes around town. Short sentences. Things like, "You are more than they told you. Heaven begins within. Jesus taught you to vibrate, not to kneel." Some thought it was strange. Others laughed. But there were people who kept it. One day a girl stopped me on the street with tears in her eyes. "Was it you who left that note on my father's bike?" It was a paper with just one sentence. "The miracle is you." I smiled. And in that moment I understood that the mission had begun. And if you've come this far with an open heart, feeling like you're not listening to a story, but rather a memory that you already carried within you, comment below, "I am the miracle," or tell me what phrase would you put in an anonymous note to wake someone up. Don't underestimate the power of this. And if you haven't signed up yet, this is your calling. Every word, every vibration, every story is a seed, and seeds, when watered with truth, always flourish. A few days have passed since the note reached the girl on the bicycle, and since then something seemed to have changed in the city. It was subtle, almost imperceptible. But for those with open minds, it was impossible not to notice. People began to slow down, not in behavior but in presence. The baker started looking me in the eye as he handed me the change. The woman at the gas station, who until then had only been repeating "good morning" automatically, started asking my name. Children stared at me longer than usual, as if they saw something adults couldn't yet. What I've realized is that when you begin to vibrate in a way that is consistent with the truth of your soul, the world around you begins to resonate, because reality is not solid, it is sensitive, it is vibrational, and matter is nothing more than a consequence of the invisible field that you feed with your frequency. I began to understand in practice what the creature had told me days before, that Jesus healed not with formulas, but with coherence. He aligned what he felt with what he said, what he believed with what he imagined. Therefore everything bowed before him, because the world obeys him who is whole. And for the first time in over 60 years I felt whole. Of course, it wasn't easy to maintain the frequency all the time. One day I woke up with a bitter taste in my mouth and an intrusive thought telling me that it was all an illusion, that I was deceiving myself, that the creature was just a sophisticated form of my need for meaning. But instead of fighting the thought, I welcomed it. I sat on the edge of the bed, took a deep breath, and said in a low voice, "Okay, if this is an illusion, at least let it be an illusion that made me feel alive." And as I said this, I felt the crystal in my pocket vibrate. It was as if he were saying, "Exactly that, Frank, exactly that." And that morning I went to the shed. The creature was meditating. Her hands were slightly raised, her eyes closed. Subtle fields shimmered around her, as if the very air acknowledged her presence. She opened her eyes slowly and said, "Today you will see a truth that can break you, but it can also heal you." I swallowed hard. She asked me to follow her into the ship. I entered for the first time. The interior was surprisingly simple. A circular space, its walls seemingly pulsating with soft waves of light. In the center, a chair resembling a throne, but made of a material that seemed both liquid and solid at the same time. "This ship doesn't travel through space. It travels through memory," she said. I stood still. "You want to show me?" "What?" She came closer. She touched my forehead with 2 fingers. Immediately an image formed before me. But it wasn't a hologram, it was an experience. It was me, little, a child, crying inside the closet of my old house. I heard my father's voice shouting, then silence. And then another scene, me at 12, praying alone in the backyard after losing my dog. And another, at 27, sitting at the kitchen table, alone, with divorce papers in hand. Each scene was like a key unlocking a dark room inside me, until an image formed more strongly. A memory I never wanted to face. My mother, in the hospital, holding my hand, the last look, and the phrase she said before leaving, "You will remember everything, my son. Just promise me you won't forget again." I never understood what she meant at that time. Until now. The creature spoke in a firm voice. "Your mother was part of it." Part of what? Of awakening. She knew. She felt. But her mission was not to complete the cycle. It was to prepare the ground. My legs gave out. I sat on the floor of the ship, trembling. She guided me here. She planted seeds in your field. And every tear you shed afterward was water. I cried like I hadn't cried since I was a child. And there, for the first time, I didn't cry out of sadness. I cried for deliverance. Because I realized that everything that hurt me also brought me down. Every absence, every fall, every loss. It was like a pickaxe in the ice of my consciousness, so that one day I would wake up. The creature then opened a compartment in the center of the ship. From there he removed a small object wrapped in golden fabric. This is what we call a remembrance knot, a living stone that records soul frequencies. She placed it in my hands. "This was programmed with your mother's emotions. with your childhood, with your origins, and with the call you sent out to the universe even without knowing it. It was warm. It beat like a heart. And at the exact moment I placed the stone against my chest, I had another vision. This time from myself. But not broken Frank, nor waking Frank. It was the whole Frank standing on a stage, speaking to hundreds, maybe thousands, but not with a microphone, not with slides. He spoke with his eyes, with the field, with the energy, and I understood. The mission was just beginning. Back in reality, the creature looked at me for the last time that afternoon and said, "Now you must return, but not as before. You are a sower, and the harvest begins within." I returned home like someone carrying the fire of Prometheus in their pocket, and every person who crossed my path, I no longer saw them as strange. Every face was a mirror, and I, like Jesus did, now understood the simplest gesture. Look with presence, with truth, with the heart. In the following days I wrote more notes, but now I also recorded them. I recorded my voice, I recorded the memories, I recorded the signals. And one of those recordings is coming to you now in this video. If you felt your chest vibrate, your eyes filled, time stop, it's because you're remembering. Comment here, "I am a sower," or if you like, write the name of someone you feel is ready to awaken. Sometimes just by saying someone's name with intention, the field starts to act. And if you haven't liked or subscribed yet, maybe this is your way of saying, "I heard, and I'm ready," because what comes next will change everything. And if you ask me now, looking into my eyes, "Frank, did all of this really happen?" I would tell you yes. But not in the way you are used to calling real, because the reality I knew was too narrow to fit all of that. The certainties, the logic, the limits of matter, of time, of what can or cannot be explained, all of this fell apart. And in its place there was a new space, a sacred void, a silence full of meaning. Because when the heart finally remembers, there is no need to prove anymore. You just feel. And I felt it. I felt the touch of the presence. I felt the field vibrating with me. I felt my mother saying she was with me all along. I felt Jesus not as a memory of the past, but as a living, present, available energy. And more than anything, I felt like I was no longer alone. And if you've made it this far with me, you listened to every word like someone listening to a song you already knew but had forgotten the melody. If your body reacted with chills, with emotion, with silence, then maybe you're not alone either. Maybe I never have been. Maybe this story was written for you to remember, not just me, but of himself. Because every person who crosses this path does not come by chance. You might think you clicked on this video out of curiosity, or by algorithm, but I believe in something bigger. Frequency brought you here, and if you brought it, it's because something inside you is already ready. Ready to admit that you no longer want to survive, you want to live. Ready to let go of the old and embrace what is already trying to be born. Ready to step out of the victim role and remember that you are a co-author of this reality. Yes, you who have been through so much and thought it was punishment, when in fact it was training. You who have already lost people, had sleepless nights, and wondered if that was all there was to it. And now you feel that, no, it wasn't just that. You who may never have told anyone, but dream of something bigger, more beautiful, more true, even without knowing what it is yet. This message was sent to you, not by me, but by something that operates through me, and which can, if you allow it, also operate through you, because we are not special. But when we respond to the call, we become a channel. And when you become a channel, the world changes around you. People feel, the doors open, the signs repeat themselves, the 47 appear, the encounters line up, and life, which once seemed heavy, now flows, not because it became easy, but because you are light. And if this video served to remind you of that, so it was worth every word. Now, it's up to you. You can close the tab and go on with your life as before. You can accept that call, not from me, but from your own heart. You can start with something small. Write a sentence. Breathe with intention. Leave a note for someone. Look into the eyes of the one you love and say, "I am here, for real." Or you can click on the next video that will appear here on the screen. Yes, that one. Because the journey is not over yet. There are more revelations there. More seeds. More keys. And if you've made it this far, it's because you're ready to take the next step. Take a deep breath now. Feel your heart, and decide with presence. If you felt something true here, comment, "I am a channel," or write what touched your spirit most in this video. Not for me, but for you to record that something has awakened. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, now is the time. Not as an obligation, but as a ritual, like someone lighting a candle, like someone planting a seed, as if saying silently, I heard, I remember, and I'm ready. Thank you for walking with me this far. In truth, now click on the next video. What you will hear there can change everything. See you there. And remember, you were never alone.